where we had a side hustle doing an advertising company.
Yeah.
And it got off the grounds pretty well. We signed some clients like Domino's and Pepsi, and it was going well. It was a very simple advertising model. But we were so quick to get ourselves out of it that we immediately dropped salaries on some salespeople and just go, hey, why don't you go sell it for us? Mm-hmm. And then just sunk our teeth into that fixed cost of salaries, and they weren't landing deals. And then the next thing you know, we took out some debt to see if it would survive. Oh. And then the meeting turned into, hey, okay, do we enjoy doing business together after having this 4-hour really hardcore discussion of why did we fail at this thing?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, back in the studio hanging out with Dan and Greg from Cultivate Advisors. You actually saw your business partner, co-founder, on the podcast last year. Casey came on, and we talked about his business owner journey. It'll be interesting to talk about you guys as partners with him not being here, so that should be interesting. But coming in from Milwaukee and Chicago, I appreciate you guys making the trip. I would say that for those that are EPI followers, I'd like to think like a name brand inside of the EPI community. You guys do a lot to support our SEPAs, have SEPAs at your own firm as well. You guys are one of the nation's largest, I would say, small business consulting and advisory groups. I want to thank you for your service as well.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I was doing my research preparing the show, and I did not know about that, Greg. So thank you. 101st Airborne, huh?
Yeah.
So did you get into the military like right after high school, or
yeah, I need to figure out a way to pay for college.
And that's what took you there?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for your service. So, gentlemen, I think one of the things I'm also supposed to ask you is why pass on West Point?
So the story.
You know too?
I don't.
I don't think Dan knows it. So the story is, I didn't even know what West Point was until halfway through my freshman year in high school. We got transferred from Chicago to New Jersey for my dad's job, and I met my, still to this day, best friend, John Hayes. His dad, they live right down the street, was a West Point grad. So I got to tag along when they go for football games and different stuff. So I learned about the academy from, an alumni.
Yeah, right.
And, of course, then you get the experience of an officer's, view of it.
Oh, okay.
And so I just kind of fell in love with, like, the tradition, the rigor, discipline, how hard it is to get in. But it was a full ride scholarship. And you paid that back in service afterwards. But, the purpose of the military academies is to generate career officers who want to spend 20 years in.
Yeah, of course.
And so I thought that's what I wanted to do. In high school, I applied. I got academically qualified. I got, congressman nomination, all that. But I didn't get an appointment because, thousands of people, there was only 1,000 that they pick, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, I still need to figure out how to pay for school. So I went into the Army right after high school. And when I was in the Army, I found out that there's an Army school called West Point Prep School. Never heard of it before, but it's for active duty folks who are trying to figure out, could I qualify? So it's an intense one academic year of, math and English typically, military training, and then physical/sports.
Yeah.
And you start off with 300 kids, and they tell you at the beginning, hey, listen, there's no guarantee anybody's going to make it in, but we can guarantee you it's going to be less than 5. It might be 2 or 3. And they just start slashing people left and right. And so I knew about halfway through the school year I was going to be one of the people that got in.
Yeah.
But at that time, I had a chance to kind of reflect and go, do I want to be a career officer? I think the experience of West Point would have been amazing. But I didn't want to take a slot away from somebody that was aligned with that, right? Yeah. And the interesting thing about the story is how often, now we advise business owners, do we see somebody make a decision thinking they're going down a particular path and then start getting feedback that's telling them that maybe, this isn't right. And oftentimes we just go, I'm just going to barrel down on it and work harder through it, and I'm going to ignore the feedback. If I would have gone to West Point, I wouldn't be sitting here today because it was when I went to University of Illinois is when I started my real entrepreneurial journey, and I wouldn't have taken the same path.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were talking about this on a couple other shows too. Like I have only one regret, and that was never serving. So I wanted to do the same. I want to go ROTC. I met with a bunch of RTC people and like totally blew the meeting. It was like I'm a pretty extroverted guy and like totally blew this meeting. And my dad set up this thing for me,
Yeah.
And on the car ride home, it was like super quiet. And then finally Dad like looked over at me and he was like, "What the hell's wrong with you, man?" And he obviously my dad, right? He knows. He's like, "Dude, you do this kind of stuff all." I was in high school. I was like a student ambassador, right?
Right.
And I totally blew it. And I don't know, man, the universe or God working in weird ways because that killed I was like, I don't think I can do this because I totally blew this meeting with some colonel,
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started really focusing on my landscaping company. So it's the same kind of thing, right? It kind of works in weird ways where I don't think I'd be sitting at this table with all of you if I would have made a career out of the military and then I had this whole life plan, right? When you're like 16, you're like, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to be a U.S. Marshal,
right?
And now I'm here and part owner in Exit Planning Institute. So wild ride. But so you have it was cool to have Casey in here and have you guys talk about it. And my research too, correct me if I'm wrong, you and Casey have been doing business together for like nearly 20 years, if not longer. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're coming up on 20 years.
Coming up on 20 years.
Our 20-year anniversary is next year. Yeah,
is next year.
Yeah, we're gonna go on a vacation together or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. How did you meet Casey? Back in what was he doing? Like a painting franchise?
Painting franchising.
Yeah.
So in college, he was a prime 18-year-old owning his first franchise, and I was I was much older and mature as 21-year-old. He did not have to use his fake ID to go out to the bars. And so he owned a franchise just outside of Chicago. I owned a franchise just outside of Milwaukee.
Okay.
And I think he told the story already.
Yeah.
Just as far as they paired us up at one of the franchisee training events.
He didn't necessarily talk about that, I don't think.
He did. Yeah, he did.
I think we need the other half of the story.
Yeah, he skips. Yeah. No, but so and he'll admit to this. The thing was I was the top performing franchise owner at the time. He was the lowest performing franchise owner. So they said, let's take the worst guy, let's take the best guy, put them together, and hopefully magic happens. And if you know Casey well, if you take that intensity that he has and that energy that he has to drive business, but then you just start like getting skills going with him.
Yeah.
He can go do anything. And I've always told the story, and I said this even at his wedding as well, is if you give Casey 3 years, he'll typically jump in head first and maybe be the worst person in the first so many months or year. But by year 3, he will be the best in the room at that thing. And so he's proven that time and time again as a franchise owner. And then we were recruited to the corporate office to actually be part of the franchisor. So fresh out of college, and he was still in college while he was recruited to then basically be the ones that sold the franchises, trained up the franchisees, and then scaled up the businesses and consulted them. So our history was always centered around building businesses from nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did time and time again. But he proved that over in the franchise role, the franchisor role, and then he eventually became a shareholder and vice president of the U.S. For there. And then from there, we kind of separated because the franchised organization, College Pro, was actually just one of the small franchise organizations. California Closets, Paul Davis Restoration, a lot of other major companies out there are owned by the same mothership, I'll call it. And so Paul Davis Restoration, which is insurance restoration companies, called me in to work for the franchisor. So I traveled North America launching their franchises, doing training events, and then doing the consulting and scaling of those businesses before we got into what is today Cultivate Advisors.
So how did you guys get kind of rekindled again?
We never lost touch.
Right?
So we were always buddies. We'd always talk smack. Always very competitive. The entrepreneurial itch that we all naturally have. When you work for the franchisor, you get to feel like ownership as an entrepreneur, but we still had this itch to own our own thing. So we actually had our first failing company together where we had a side hustle doing an advertising company. And it got off the grounds pretty well. We signed some clients like Domino's and Pepsi, and it was going well. It was a very simple advertising model. But we were so quick to get ourselves out of it that we immediately dropped salaries on some salespeople and just go, hey, why don't you go sell it for us? And then just sunk our teeth into that fixed cost of salaries, and they weren't landing deals. And then the next thing you know, we took out some debt to see if it would survive. And then the meeting turned into, hey, okay, do we enjoy doing business together after having this 4-hour really hardcore discussion of why did we fail at this thing? Yeah, we do. Do we want to do business in the future together? Absolutely. I know we've got something that we can build. What should we do? And it was like, well, what have we been doing this whole time, but build it in our own model for the everyday entrepreneur that does not have the support system around them of people that have owned businesses by their side, and build into a subscription model. So that's where that failure actually led to the discussion of what we built today.
And so when you guys started up Cultivate, how did you guys decide roles? So we've actually, this round of shows that we're on here in 2024, we've actually had multiple partnerships in. And so the guys from REAG, for example, they're celebrating 20 years together too. And what I didn't know about them is that they actually met each other in 1992, like as high school football buddies, right? So like talk about a long relationship with someone. That's pretty incredible. So, and Scott and Todd have two different roles now at REAG. So when you guys started Cultivate, how did you guys break up the business? Say, look, I'm gonna focus here and you focus here.
I think it's easier to have that discussion, at least for us, when you've got the perspective of when you advise companies, what would you tell them to do on that decision, right? Mm-hmm. And we all know that as business owners, if you actually look at the business as an asset and how does it scale and grow at the fastest pace possible and achieve the things you want, put your ego aside and make decisions on strengths, weaknesses. And so that was an easy conversation. And ironically, when we got to the place of talking about who should be the CEO.
Sure.
We had already done a advising meeting with one of our clients where we had 3 equal partners in the room, and we walked them through on the decision making for them to decide who's the CEO, who's the COO. And we had to diffuse the egos and really go factual around weaknesses, strengths, and actually what's going to take this thing to the next level. And so when we sat down that same year for us, as we go, okay, this is going to go beyond us. We got to actually talk about roles because it's no longer going to be the Dan and Casey show.
Exactly right.
It was like, we don't need to talk about Casey. You're the CEO, right? Like, yeah.
Really?
Oh, no, hands down. I mean, everybody that is an advisor or within our firm knows, his pace and his vision and where he works and where his strength is. CEO all day, right? And if you look at my role or roles that I've had, it's actually it's been the standing joke at our annual retreat.
Yeah.
I think Vince, who put up a slide at our last retreat, it basically listed off 50 roles of Dan Gramann over the last 10 years, and everybody was just dying laughing because they're going, yeah, actually those all did exist for Dan, right? Yeah. Because my role has always been to jump into the next department that needs to be built. Or whatever the new thing is. And so I'm basically throw me in, coach, right? Like what is the next thing the business needs? Yeah. I'll go be the one that falls on his face all day.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I fail a lot in the business. Yeah. And I enjoy being able to do different roles. So
when you tell that story, though, I laugh because you remind me of like that story reminds me of Josh Koza here. So you guys know Josh well, right?
Yeah.
For our audience, Josh Koza is our longest running employee at 9 years, right? So he's been through, like he was here when there was like 3 of us, and now there's 30 something of us. But Josh is very similar to that, right? We could probably put up a slide at our retreat and say, Josh has legitimately done every role, and he came into this business not knowing anything. So Josh and I, similarly to kind of your story, we knew we wanted to do business together at some time. Josh is, I don't know, probably 5 years younger than me or something like that. And he was down in Columbus, Ohio, so 2 hours south of us. And we had a conversation. He came up for the weekend, and we were sitting in my home office. I remember having this conversation with him. He's like, I need you to get prepared because in the next couple of years, we're going to start hiring more than just me and Dad, and I'd like you to come and I don't know in what capacity. And he was like, well, neither do I because I'm running logistics right now, so I don't know where the hell I fit into a professional education company. But then we had to unfortunately fire someone, and I called Josh up like 30 days later. So this wasn't a 2-year thing, 30 days later, and I say, so, dude, I know we just like met like a couple of months ago.
How about now?
And like, how about like, when can you pack up, move you, and he had just got engaged, so move you and your fiance, who I believe is from Columbus, up to Cleveland, Ohio. Like the next couple of days, I got a call from his mother too, Mrs. Koza.
Oh no!
She was like, I am so happy. Joshua is so excited. You're going to bring my baby home. I was like, now I feel a bigger obligation to make this happen. But Josh, when he came in here, he did a little bit of sales work and like a lot of like member experience, customer relationship work, and then helped me run events. And then he moved he moved into like product development when we were going a little bit beyond SEPA, really rolling out conferences and stuff. Then he was the manager of our customer service team, what we call our member experience team. Then he moved into a business development role, so selling new SEPAs. And now he's in a strategic relationship. So he's done a lot. And I think it makes him actually really good at what he does now because he's seen the business develop. Yeah. And he understands certified exit planning advisors and the people that surround them. So when you talk about putting that slide up, I thought about Josh.
Yeah.
But I also think is what's really cool about you and Casey's story about who becomes CEO is that I've been in 2 partnerships, one in my first business, the landscaping business with my childhood friend Mikey, the M and the M&S. But Mike, when I was like gung-ho, like let's do this, I said, all right, at the time I was going to go to school for business, and I said, you're a more like technical guy. You go to school for horticulture, so we'll have best of both worlds. I'll learn how to run the business. You'll learn the actual craft of landscape design and construction and maintenance. And he said, man, I got bad news. I'm going to go to nursing school. I was like, damn it. So I lost my business partner.
How is this supposed to help the landscaping company?
Yeah, I was like, I thought we had a thing going here. So we never had to have that conversation like me and Mike. And then in the business that we are today, that was a pretty straightforward conversation. Though Dad and I'm 49%, Dad's 51, it was pretty damn clear back in 2012 when we bought the business who was going to be the CEO, right? So Dad's like, I'm the CEO, you're the vice president, not even the president yet, right? So Dad made me really work for it.
You have not earned the president.
Yes, we've talked about it on the show too. Dad's a guy that goes, you got to do the job before you get the job. Mm-hmm. And I was the young buck with I don't want to say like maybe a little bit of an ego that said, well, Dad, I just ran a company for 10 years and sold it at 24, 25. He's like, that's great. Show me you can do this too.
That was that company, right?
So we didn't have to have that it didn't seem like an actual awkward conversation for you guys.
No,
it was
not
pretty
at all.
clear. But it was,
in fact,
got that opportunity though to talk to Dad about that.
All of our leaders inside of our organization are the exact same way too. Yeah. Everybody that started here had to start as an advisor, right? Yep. If you look at Simone and Jeff Rendell, who's now our COO, I mean, they all had, it was a requirement. You have to start as an advisor, working with the clients. And if you want to explore that option of leadership, we still have to start here. Yeah, right.
It's cool. And so, it served me well, honestly, as much as like after I did that job for like 9 years, I was like, Dad, every year my dad would give me a performance review, right? And I was like waiting for him to say, we're going to promote you to president. The year would go by. And he would give me a praise. We hit our numbers, and I was like, but honestly, looking back on it now.
Can we delete Vice off of this?
Yeah, I started, I almost like when I think Paige came around, our director of marketing, she was like, Scott, like it's always confusing because I think you're more of the president than the vice president here, so I'm just going to start removing the vice. I was like, don't do that. Dad's going to be pissed.
Good work, Paige. Yeah. So anyways, you owe it to Paige then.
I owe it to Paige for pushing me into the president's
That's why we're here now.
But what I will say, and you kind of allude to this too in talking about your people at Cultivate, you guys are all entrepreneurial spirited, and I think almost everybody has owned or run a company before. So, Greg, like, what's your entrepreneurial story too? Because you had a company before you came to Cultivate as well, right?
Yeah, I owned 2 before that. Yep. I got my start selling encyclopedias door to door in college.
Seriously?
Yeah, I turned down a College Pro franchise.
Unreal. That's unreal.
Yeah, so if you think you're laughing about it now, imagine in college the crap I got from telling people what my internship was going to be.
I sell encyclopedias.
So it was actually
a tough job, I feel.
It was door to door, cold call, one call close, and I did it for the first year just as a salesperson. Actually made good money. Mm-hmm. Second year, I went to various college campuses, recruited a team, started off with about 20 people. We trained them. We took them out into territories. Huh. We had lost about half of them because it was straight commission.
Yeah, because just straight commission.
And but in 90 days, that team of college kids who knew nothing about anything, we did $250,000 in sales.
In encyclopedia sales.
In encyclopedia sales. And so that's when I kind of got the bug, right? I'm like, ooh, like you could kind of control you could build what you want to build, right? Yeah. We couldn't work the way that we worked. Like that wasn't a long-term strategy. But before I came I've just started my 6th year at Cultivate. The 14 years prior, I had both a mortgage company at the beginning of those 14 years and a financial service company in parallel. So then the mortgage, bubble burst, the housing crisis. I owned a mortgage company through that. And then 2008-09 with the financial services blow up.
Yep.
Owned them both through that.
Yep.
So that was a lot of fun. And then the last, probably 10, 12 years before coming to Cultivate, it was just advanced planning.
Okay.
So we'd partner with the wealth managers who they were struggling to get their business owner to want to do the kind of planning that they need to do.
Exactly.
And it was because the owners just don't really care about how great you are at money management. But if you talk about, hey, what about tax reduction, asset protection, wealth creation, and eventually transfer through the business with an eye towards exit or legacy or whatever lens they were using, that opened up the conversation with the business owner a lot faster. Absolutely. And so we would partner with those guys. I had some niched out tax and legal pros who I still work with today. And we would come either as a virtual team behind the scenes or at the table, whatever they wanted. And we would have just a collaborative, integrated plan.
Yeah.
And then lots of assets under management happened. The lawyers got paid to build the right kind of tax and estate plans and asset protection plans. Sometimes there was insurance involved, sometimes there wasn't. But the end result was the owner got what they needed. The wealth manager was now fully integrated into a plan that was holistic. We got paid fees for doing the design work, and we would participate on the insurance if there was insurance. And so it was I learned a lot. I learned that the business was the goose that's laying the golden egg.
Yeah.
And if the business is not performing, there's no money for any of this other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when my best friend in college, who's been a Cultivate client for how long?
Since 9 years?
Yeah, like 9 years. So I've been here 6 years. He's like, dude, you got to check out these guys. I think you'll like what they're doing. And it allowed me to switch my focus, drop all those licenses, and purely focus on the business as the engine.
Yeah.
But because I understand the other side of it, we can really advocate for you need to be working with your tax legal and wealth folks like now, not later. Yeah. And so we build it into the roadmap with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like too that you guys do is, and Greg, tell me about it. It's the ultimate exit lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So when I was looking at preparing for the show too, I always talk about living a more value acceleration centric life. And what I like about the exit lifestyles, it brings to me exit planning across all three legs of the stool: business, personal, and financial. So
into the present,
and into the and certainly into the present. So talk to me about what that is and what's the website. I wrote it down. It's myexitlifestyle.com. Is that the website?
Yeah,
that go to.
Yeah, it's got some stuff on there.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So I thought about, if I believe like there's three main problems most business owners have: they own a job, not a business. They have all their financial eggs tied up in that business basket, and often close to 100% of their income tied to that operating company. And then third, in pursuit of solving those two things, they tend to over-sacrifice on the personal, family, and health front. And that's sustainable for a minute. Like, I've owned two businesses through some rough times. I know what it's like to have to lean in. Yeah. But, you can white knuckle for a period of time, but if you burn the candle at both ends for too long, you will burn it all down.
Absolutely.
And so what people really want is the opposite of that. I want to turn my business into an asset that can thrive without me. We call that business freedom. Yep. I'd like to use some of that time and money to create some financial freedom along the way, other liquid and income producing assets. And I want to build the business with intention that I can have a life. I got to put the oxygen mask on me to be able to show up and pull off big stuff inside of my company. Yeah. And so I don't want to let the tail wag the dog, because it's hard work being an entrepreneur, and it doesn't get easier as the business grows. What happens, the owner has to get stronger. They have to get better at being a leader and a developer of people, process, and systems. So it no longer becomes the Dan and Casey show. They had to transfer their knowledge to a team of people who could take and build on it instead of relying upon it. And so I was like, I like the word exit, even when exit was a 4-letter word, right? Because I've been involved in probably 12 years in the exit space. And I said, okay, if this is what I believe is the correct way to do it, what would I call it? So I said, well, exit lifestyle. Why exit lifestyle? Because it's like, well, a lot of times people think like exit is later. Exit is something that happens to unicorns who sell for a lot of money. That may or may not be me in the lower mid-market space. And I was like, well, what if you could live your ultimate exit lifestyle? What is that, by the way? Even if you never sold. Yeah. What if we could just build? What if we could just build the company that gives you some business freedom, some financial freedom, some personal freedom? Guess what? That becomes a lot more fun to run. If we focus on value first, revenue and profit just come along for the ride. you will be also making a more valuable and transferable company. And if we are focusing on the three legs of the stool, working with those tax, legal, and wealth folks, you're going to be prepared for life's curveballs or the unsolicited phone call that is the opportunity you can't pass up.
Absolutely.
So what I just described to you is exit planning. Mr. Mrs. Business Owner.
Exactly. Right.
But not what you thought it was. So I love using the word exit in it and use lifestyle because, no, we're just going to build you what you want right now with intention, and it's going to lead you to more options later.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of getting away from exit planning. A lot of people said when we first debuted Dad's methodology, called it the Value Acceleration Methodology, and people loved it, but they were like, dude, you should change your name to the Value Acceleration Institute.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of exit, right? I think we're all going to exit in some way, shape, or form at some time, and I think we should always be prepared. So similar to kind of your thoughts, that's why we named the podcast "Exit Is Now."
Yeah,
because it could be right now, it could be planned or unplanned, it could be down the line. So I think exit is all around us, or there's an exit style.
And I think it's more powerful too when you confront that business owner, through some provocative language. Exit, what is that, right? Yeah. And then some education that, which could be as quickly as I just did. The light bulb goes off. And now they are way more bought into it as opposed to if we were just talking about value acceleration or just talking about growth planning or some other thing.
Totally. So one of the reasons I really wanted to bring you guys on the show is that earlier in the year we debuted the State of Owner Readiness survey, and you guys have some really unique survey data too. In fact, I was telling you, I printed off this little graph, right, that I have my little scratch on, but it was so powerful to me in all seriousness that I took our company through a conversation around this at one of our stand-up, Monday morning company-wide meetings. So I want to kind of dive into your thoughts on some of this and pick your brain through it. We're going to do that right after a quick break. So stick with us and we'll be right back.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, and with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
Everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So I want to transition now into some of this data that both of our companies have been collecting on business owners. So from our State of Owner Readiness survey, I think we surveyed a similar quantity of business owners, about 1,200 business owners for us in the State of Owner Readiness. When I looked at all of that data and when we collectively looked at it, really four key observations for us came out of there. One, owners are certainly more educated and aware of exit planning, right? The exit lifestyle certainly is more of an accepted term in their life. Two, family has played a huge influence on a lot of business owners. Age influences a lot as well. And then we have a bigger opportunity. EPI was founded on this $10 trillion opportunity. I think it's more like a $14 trillion opportunity with $9 trillion of it potentially coming up in the next 5 years. So Dan, from a high level, working with your clients, working in our exit planning space, what are you seeing? You feel the observations are similar to what you see in your working clients, and a very 50,000 foot. What are you seeing in the market today?
Yeah. So what's interesting is when we started Cultivate Advisors 10 years ago, we started with the intention of it being a growth and scaling firm. Yep. I mean, just focus solely on growing into the future.
Yeah.
We know that a business that can scale is also an exitable business typically. Absolutely. As well, right? So we ironically fell into the space that more and more percentage of clients were starting to also reach up proactively, going like, I want to talk about exit as well. So I'd say, at this point, about 70% of clients are coming to us going, I want to scale or make sure that my scaling that I am experiencing now is healthy and it's going well. Or now about 30% are with exit in mind, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and Greg is in a lot of these conversations. I mean, it's definitely an expertise in Greg's space, and the reality is we started this value and health assessment last year.
Yeah.
And the whole goal of it was, the carrot was everybody wants to know their value of their business. The value and health assessment that we do, even though it does give, based on real data, 77,000 real exits in the last 10 year by industry, it will tell you a range, of based on your industry. Here's probably the low valuation on profit versus high.
Yeah.
And then same with profit. But again, don't forget that like 80% of businesses don't sell. So it doesn't include that data, right? All the zeros on there.
Yeah.
We focus, majority of it is on the health. So we're looking at the propeller methodology of what we look at for any business, any industry, of what is it to have a highly valued asset as a business. Like how built out is the financial model and processes? How built out are the sales systems, processes, everything there, marketing, recruiting systems to get the top talent and bring them into the organization, leadership, productivity. And so we look at all these areas of the business and have them self-assess. And with that gets a score. And if they have a score of only 50% out of 100, we know in this room that, that's a failing grade in the school system, right?
I've seen that grade. I've seen that grade for sure.
But ironically, if you look at majority of the 1,100, so you had 1,200.
Yeah.
We had almost 1,150. So very similar pools, right? The average was a failing grade. Right. And so about 54% health rate overall across these organizations. And we're talking the average organization, between $5 and $8 million in revenues. So they're not small mom and pop shops that are just going off the ground. There's some good businesses out there. But if they were to try to sell tomorrow, the data is telling that there's some work in front of us, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So the health just brings awareness, even if we don't talk to them ever, and they just take this thing annually before they do their annual planning. The questions it asks go, am I doing that? So I actually am excited that you actually had the team do that here, because you're an organization and you care about this stuff, right?
Well, we talked about this at the top of the show, right? It's like the book I'll write one day is growing up through value acceleration.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I have the benefit of having dad who I don't know any other way to think about running a business, really. Certainly my time here at EPI, where now we're invested together, right? Dad's always been a huge mentor, but until we got to EPI, and he was the bank and the landscaping company too, right? I was too young to get a loan, so he would finance. But when we got to EPI, that's really where I really fell into his methodology and have been teaching it like all of you, but also practicing it as well. So absolutely, this is... I think this was interesting. We'll get into this, but Greg, if somebody kind of boots on the ground there, is it also influenced by age? So we're seeing the market change, right? Back in the $10 trillion opportunity stuff in 2005 and 2007 when EPI was starting, most of those were baby boomers. 60% of the market was baby boomers. Looks like that market is now down to 51% boomers, 43%, basically the top end of the millennials. So let's say like 38 all the way to about 58 years old. And obviously Gen Xers, millennials, and baby boomers have different characteristics, generational characteristics. Do you think any of it's influenced by age, generation?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that the boomers tended to not want to talk about this until the end. Now that's changed a lot over the past 10 years
with education.
Yeah, it was the proverbial 4-letter word. People didn't want to mention it.
Right.
The next generation, I'm part of the X generation. Right. I find that these folks are willing to start the conversation there. Yeah. They can easily in their brain, even if they were thinking just growth, when you start talking about like, what are we growing to? What's our game plan here? Right. And this is your biggest asset. So how do we have a holistic view here? Then they start understanding, well, exit planning is really just doing good work now. Yeah, doing good work but now. It doesn't take a lot. What I do notice is that the younger generation, and I got a couple guys who are definitely outliers in their 20s. They started business 2 years ago, we're going to hit we hit $6.5 million last year. It's like 50% margins.
Yeah.
And we're on scale to, grow again, and they're probably going to sell it. I see a lot of them are looking at, so they could grow this thing bigger, but they have a lifestyle in mind.
Yeah.
And so they want to exit. They want to exit now on this one. It'll be an 8-figure exit for them because we were working with their M&A guy. And then they are already big into real estate, even at this young age. So their goal is, we could grow this thing bigger. We're getting great incomes off of it right now, but we want to cash in while we can and take some chips off the table. We know how to build they have a vision and a game plan for their real estate empire, which is all passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they're like, this is what we're doing. Like we have the 9 to 5, 40 years of corporate America. That is nowhere in our vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting, Dan, when you mentioned that you have a good chunk of your clients or prospects coming in to talk to you that are thinking growth and maybe exit. They're coming already. If you go back to like my dad, who was in this industry in 2008, I remember when I came into Dad's business 2012 and 13 when I sold mine, just watching the struggle in educating the owner up front. When Dad came in, they had a problem, right? There was really like they had an efficiency problem, a people problem, a margin problem. So they were bringing Dad in to fix a problem. But it would be so interesting to be at your table now, and the owner goes, "Hey, I want to grow, scale, and I want to think about potential exit." Like, what a game changer! I think
the discussions have changed a ton.
Yeah,
and I'm lucky enough to have experienced some unfortunate times of family in my life where my father and my father-in-law have both had exits in their business at $0.
Oh man!
And so when I spoke at the California Association of Business Brokers, I was the keynote there, and up on the screen I put their faces, and I talked about them, and both their names are Bill.
Okay. Yeah. Really.
Boomer Bills,
Boomer
and
Bill.
and I've talked to folks, even like my mentor that that has supported me a lot in business as well, and he's a boomer as well. And the discussion of selling a business never was a discussion, right? They never looked at it as an asset. It was more like, I don't want to be a corporate employee.
That's kind of what you were saying about
right?
the younger guys.
It was more focused on, I want to be in control of my destiny, but never thinking of a business as an asset. So then typically what would happen is we'd get to the time where now exit either was something you didn't have an option in, but it was too late, the work that had to be done at that point, right? And so for both my father and father-in-law, who are both mentors to me as well, and they've taught me so much in life, they've taught me also through what they've done in their own businesses of things you just have to prioritize and look at, because one day you might not actually have that option, or it's going to get to the point where you're just done and you're ready to exit, and you're like, you know what, I'm okay to just retire at this point. And so they've taught me some amazing lessons. But so I don't know if I answered.
No, you did. The conversation I think has definitely changed, and I think it's for obviously all of us in the space, like what an opportunity to be in the space, because now the client isn't like. My dad would spend months educating someone then it finally clicked. That's why he started that Owner Roundtable series, because no one knew. So he was like, all right, let me take you through this roundtable series. We'll do it. We'll get you lunch. It's a free program. And then finally, 5 months later, they're like, Chris, I get what you're saying. Now let's start an engagement. But now if they're coming to you with that in mind, I just think about that though long term, how well off the economy, the owners, our advisory community, if we're all thinking exit lifestyle.
Right.
But I will say that doesn't mean that it is just flip the script to that's the discussion.
Right.
Different generation walks into the day. I think it is very generational. So I share the story on my father-in-law too, because he had a health event 3-4 years ago where he basically had a seizure. I don't know if it was a mini stroke or whatnot, but he went from having an 8-figure revenue business to 0 that year because the business was so reliant on him. The employees actually didn't know what to do the next day. And so because his short-term memory was just gone. But I share that to go. I took that story, and you almost had to bash people's heads in the wall, like you need to be talking about this. One of my clients on the East Coast, same age as my father-in-law. I basically just said, listen to me. He wasn't even a client yet. It was basically in our stage of giving the free advising session in our sales process. And I said, whether or not you work with me, this is a real conversation, because you got 2 of your kids involved in the business. and you're telling me today that like, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Well, do you know what that even means? And so I said, we have to put together a plan of what this is going to look like and unfold, and not plan that you're going to be in this forever. I know you said you're going to go be golfing into the future for 10. You don't decide that always, though. Yeah. So can we start now? And that conversation was kind of the fast pace, at least I had the story to hit it home for him to go, okay, let's talk. And then so we worked for a long time, started to get the kids involved to where they started to buy equity and actually become into leaders of the companies. And then he bought a house in Scottsdale and golfed away from the business more often. I mean, that's the type of stuff that's more, it is exit ready, but he's not out of the business. And I hope he gets to enjoy it forever, but should always be ready for exit. Totally. And if anything, you get to enjoy the business now. Right.
Exactly.
So
yes, I'm sick of the hashtag grind mentality. Right? I'm not saying you don't have to work hard, but like this idea of, it's okay that I don't see my kids when they're awake. It's okay that, I'm just working around the clock and I'm stressed out.
Well, that's generational too. Yeah. Like your generation, you guys are kind of built for a work-life balance or blend, right? You guys kind of started that, I feel, and definitely like a work smarter, not harder through use of technology.
Right.
Unlike, to your point, the baby boomers, right? They're like the core value of success, the inventor of the 60-hour work week. I think that through Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, you're not going to see that as much as we kind of age. So I want to get into these 6 categories that you kind of walk through, because I think for the audience it's wildly interesting. And like Dan mentioned too, and we talked about at the top of the show, I was so interested in this that at our stand-up company-wide meeting, I had asked everybody, right, at all levels throughout the company to have a conversation about where we saw EPI fitting. So from my just quick look at this, though, I was telling you guys pre-show, and I want you to talk about it, the best overall category of the 6 was productivity. And with my exit planning cap on, and in all due respect for all my owner friends listening, I'm kind of calling BS here, because I was like, there is no way. And I even said, if I'm challenging myself personally as an owner, there's 4 subcategories here. One of the questions that we ask is, are the owners of the company working on the right priorities for the business while not exceeding 50 hours a week? I don't think I could really give myself a good score. I think I'm better than I've ever been, right? And back in February, I took 3 weeks away from the business and really stayed away.
I heard that you're moving your hours from 10 to 5 as well.
Yeah. Oh, so
did you make it official?
No, I did not make that official. But actually, it's kind of convenient that we mentioned this particularly, because I was influenced by Casey.
Yes.
So I asked Casey how he works, and he told me his schedule, although we have to go out for a beer or something and talk about if he's true to this schedule. Like, we got out, and I was talking to my team, and then there's no way.
BS.
But the thing that Chase...
You don't know Casey.
The thing that Casey...
He's pretty tight to it.
Yeah, see, I don't know how, I guess, but I think what he did give me in that moment was, this year, if you looked at my calendar, there are blue blocks, right? And different times, different days. To your point, like, my kids get off the bus at like 3 o'clock. And so at least 2 days a week, I'm home by 3 and I'm shut down. Like, I don't work past 3 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I help them with their homework, right? Give Joy, my wife, a little bit of a break. We are professional educators. If she's listening right now, I'm wildly more patient than her. So I'm like, we have 3 kids, 10,
I think I might be calling 6, BS
right?
now.
Yeah. So I like coming in. I like coming home and being home from there. So what he did give me, what he said stuck with me. He said, look, if you just decide to work 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, whatever it is, it will really challenge you to work on the highest and best use stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So now I have blocks in the morning and blocks in the afternoon, depending on what day, and it has, although
you've said no to more things with
I've
that.
said no to more things, but we're still in a learning curve here, because I pissed off Josh the other day, because we were sitting at that Cavs game together, and Josh said, hey, we're just talking about scheduling. He goes, you're booking into May right now, dude. Like, that's just not pop. Like, I got people that want to talk to you, but I'm saying I'm trying to stay true to the blue blocks, right? So
sorry, Josh. That's our fault.
Josh, you take the phone call. But anyways, they rank themselves pretty high in productivity, and I just think that
you're calling BS, basically.
Standard operating. I think that, I guess what I would say, I think this is a really challenging category, because I think to write standard operating procedures, to work on the highest and best use stuff, to get integrated technology, is a very deliberate and intentional thing. You gotta, for me, it's always top of mind, and it's a big challenge. But so, what do you think about this? Is the best category for owners?
Yeah, and just so everybody knows exactly what he's talking about. And if you want to take the assessment for free, you can reach out to EPI or ourselves and get it for free through us. So, but we focus on the fundamentals of any company around the financial model, sales, marketing, recruiting talent, leadership, and productivity. And so the highest ranked ones where people were self-assessing on a scale of 1 to 5, people really gave themselves higher scores on their own productivity. And then their leadership. And so what I was sharing with you before we talked today is if you look at those two things, they're more personally attached to the human, and they're more talking about themselves, and there's some ego involved, and kind of going, I'm a productive person.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm a totally productive, and I'm an amazing leader. I'm a great leader. But what they're not thinking about this is like, look at it from the business asset side too. Of is everybody in the business doing the right things and focusing? Like, is the business got the right productivity and processes and systems? Like, don't just go look at yourself and go, I'm a 5 out of 5. I'm productive and I'm an amazing leader. The business, if you walk away from it today, these questions should be more about the asset than the human.
Yeah, I would challenge your business owners too, like what we say at EPI, right? Think about it from a buyer's perspective.
Yeah.
But in this case too, when you're self-assessing, think about it. So when I looked at these questions too, I thought about like, what would my leadership team say about me, right? So like, if I felt really good here, that's what I said. Am I really working on the best? Am I really? I was like, I certainly have work to do. The other thing that stuck out to me, a best thing, if you will, the best subcategory, right?
Sure.
Sales, a 3.63, so it's the highest subcategory, but it says we have a diverse mix of clients ensuring no client accounts for more than 20% of the total revenue. I mean, again, I'm not a business advisor, but I think that customer concentration is always a hard thing for companies, especially in the lower middle market.
Oh yeah, we one of our case studies. I'll send you the case study. It's also on our website. But one of our first great stories was a client that's actually on our website. He had a $3 million organization, and 75% of that was wrapped up in one client. Big name, Amazon. Love you, Amazon.
Right.
But the problem is we know what that can create too, because basically he and his team were basically employees to Amazon, right? And so we had to make a plan to diversify that portfolio. So over the course of 6-7 years, we really dug into how do we make sure that you don't have your revenue is spread. And so we built a new sales team, processes of training them, processes of leading them, and to get it scaled up. Eventually, Amazon left the picture as a client, and the portfolio spread. And he just had an exit at $31 million in valuation last year.
Nice. Wow.
So I would love for you to buy me a dinner one of these days. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
But actually, probably more Casey than me. Casey started out, Casey started out leading him. Then I took over for a couple of years. And he's a good story where at every chapter or year along the way, there was a different good advisor for the need on the different propeller blades that you're seeing here, right? Yeah. So, but that's a good example where that can be a huge.
Yeah,
any buyer is going to look at that, and if you've got too much,
and they rank pretty good here. I mean, that 3.6.
I'm excited that's as high as that.
But it's still self-assessment.
It's self-assessment.
Again, it is, and again, I think it is actually to give the credit to the owners taking this survey too. Self-assessing is hard, right? To really be truly like non-biased, like to really think about buyer's perspective, think about from your employee's perspective. So the overall worst category though was marketing.
Oh boy.
Right? So marketing's real low, 47%, and it had the lowest subcategory at 2.1, which is really about understanding lead goals and sources, conversion metrics, and all of that good stuff. And but that wasn't as surprising to me. Do you know, and this is just maybe where I'm naive, but like if I have a manufacturing company, when I think about my buddy Joe, he's been on the show, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have a robust marketing program, right? People know who he is in the industry because he makes they manufacture like really custom stuff for the NASA and the Department of Defense. He does have a sales program, but I don't know if I think he would rank real low in a marketing program, especially the questions that you're asking about really understanding personas and all of that. So is it industry specific? Does this sway the result?
No, because anybody can lean into one single tactic of marketing,
Yeah.
and it works really good for a certain period of time. But we all know that if you were going to scale to the next level, the next level, the next level in different chapters of a business, ultimately you're going to have to spread your tactics to which are going to be the top choices, and it can't all lean on one. You can't be word of mouth forever.
Right.
You can't be, and so, and the other thing too is like if you're a business built off of word of mouth, and then many times you find out because it's the amazing relationship that the current owner, that's not an asset.
Right.
That's not an asset for a buyer because they're not going to get Joe with it. Right. And so it's surprising, but not surprising. It's just more alarming that those two low scores that were close to a 2 out of 5 on self. And I appreciate everybody being so honest about their businesses here, but they're basically saying they don't know the cost of acquiring a lead was one of them.
Yep.
And then the other one is that they actually don't have a lead plan where they've actually broken down by tactic of what are the tactics and how many leads per tactic we need to get and the cost that's going to be for each of these tactics to get there. So there's actually a marketing plan per tactic on how they're going to get there. And so I appreciate they put that down because it should be, okay, well, if we want to get more leads in the door to sell to, we probably need to slow down and actually make a plan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always think that marketing was something, if I had to rate ourselves pre-COVID, we would have been pretty poor here.
Yeah.
And what really kickstarted our marketing program was having to think not from the good old-fashioned handshake, but how do I actually generate leads, right? Because during COVID, or before COVID, I would just go to a conference, collect 100 business cards, go back to the sales team. That was marketing, right? And now the marketers, a part of our company, kind of laugh at that because they're like, dude, kind of,
Yeah.
But I think that we would rank pretty high here today. I actually think one of our worst categories could be like financials, only because I think like the 5-year macro forecast would be a little weak for us. But
I mean, we leverage tech stack to help with that. But when you on the front end, one of the questions that we ask in the assessment is, about future goals. Like, what do you want the business to be worth? I equate that to the freedom point value, the value which would be enough for whatever's next.
Fair. Yeah.
So oftentimes we're not close to it yet. So if we're going to build out a plan, we need to know out into the future to hit that future value.
Yeah.
What is the revenue, profit? What do the margins need to look like, and what's an assumed? And typically, we want to stay in the middle of the road on the multiple, right?
Right.
So that's our North Star. We got to know that usually that's a 3 to 5 year out, and then just reverse engineer. If I know what those numbers need to look like 5 years from now, then I just reverse engineer to what has to happen in the very next 12-month period to know that I'm on track.
Right.
For that.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes as business owners, we way overcomplicate this stuff because we have visions in our head of like corporate America and the way that those people do planning and the way that those people build systems, and it just doesn't apply. And I think we end up getting stuck because we think that we have to build like a 100-page report or something or pay an accountant, $20,000 to build something. It's just not the case.
So looking at these categories, when you guys get into client work, what is one of the hardest to work on? Right? Big question, right?
That is a big depends on who we're working with.
Okay, so it would depend on owner and leadership personalities, right?
Absolutely.
And their ability to accept feedback, I guess.
Absolutely.
And to me, I think like recruiting stands out for me quite a bit because I just think like even in this came up when we talked about this on our Monday morning meeting, right? A lot of the folks said like the people culture, recruiting, retaining, growing talent. I think we're good at, but we kind of have this. I don't know. I probably sound like your typical client now, like right? Like I'm always sitting with guys like you, and I'm like, I probably sound like one of their clients. But I'd like to think that we have a pretty unique kind of culture. Like you guys have experienced it. You've hung out with us now 2-3 days. I'd like to think we have something unique and special here, which I think it's kind of hard. Because I think we get the right people, right? So when we're interviewing people, like they're not sitting at the table with the wrong skill set. So they're all really good people. What we're really analyzing is, are they going to make it long term in this kind of this culture?
Right.
And you can see how close we all are too. What's kind of cool for me, and we talked about Josh being 9 years here. We're hitting 36 people this year at EPI.
Right.
And we still have that like family feel, that tight team feel, even with the new folks. So I think recruiting would be like top of mind for me. I'd love advice on how to, like, that would be number one for me. Like I don't know if we're poor here, but it's the one as an owner I'm most interested in in long-term value for me at EPI too.
Yeah, recruiting is a challenge for most of our clients. It's just this has been a crazy, post-COVID, it's just been a crazy market anyway. But it takes, you need to have expertise in-house to do it, or you got to find the right fit out of house, because you got to be able to either build that recruiting fund. I think people look at it as a just-in-time inventory. We got a hole. We'll throw an ad out on Indeed, and you'll sit down with Dan for a minute, sit down with somebody else, and then what about the onboarding? Hey, meet me in the conference room. I'll be there in an hour. Geez,
it's a low priority item. And the unfortunate thing is, we all know this. If you're a business that's built off of human capital and people, it actually should be the number one priority. The same way that you build a marketing plan and build a sales plan, you should actually build the exact same plan into your recruiting plan around who is my target market, who's my target employee. All right, now let's build a marketing plan around how do we get them attracted to our business. That's almost like a lead distribution plan for marketing, but now on finding talent and getting them to come to us. And then what is our recruiting process and interview process? That's a sales process. When you get the best people in the door to sit across the table from you, guess what? They have options.
Right.
And so you got to be really good at making sure there's an alignment and they are sold and bought into this business too, or else and so it can't be this secondhand thing like, oh, yeah, I'll be in there in a second for the interview, or else that person's going to go find that other job that people are paying big money for because they have options. And so you're at a really fun stage right now where, because I've met so many folks here, and you guys have an awesome culture,
Thank you.
And there's like themes of soccer and coaches and
similar to honestly what I feel like Cultivate would be like. We all have a competitiveness.
Extremely.
So some of us play pool, right? Some of us play soccer. Some of us play football. Some of us are musicians. So regardless of what you're doing outside of work, though, everybody's kind of always striving to be the best, which is kind of like a competitive advantage for us.
I think you're thinking the right way as far as the recruiting is going to be the next big step for you guys, because it gets harder as you go beyond what was easy as the immediate network. And then you look at future talent. That's what was hardest for us because we found the top talent of our old franchising network, right? And they were the initial, the OGs that kind of started it off. But then it got to a point of, not only is it important to get people outside of ourselves for perspective and hearing from everybody and different talents coming in, but we can't recruit this way forever. Right. And so
I exhausted that a few years ago. Right?
You've called every soccer coach locally.
You do, though. So it's funny that you talk about that, man, because it's so true. So if you look at our leadership team, we always joke with Chase, who's our product development guy, because he was like the first non-friend that I hired, right? I didn't know him. He was like a traditional recruiting process, right? Like an Indeed application. And he came in as a marketing coordinator and now sits on the executive team.
He's taller than all you guys, too.
Than all of us. Also an avid pool player. You should talk to him about this when we're in with our show. His father has a billiards company that create like pool racks and balls. So I always say they need to rename his father's company Ross Racks. That's his last name. But the rack that he has floats over top of the ball. I'm trying to give him a plug right now. And so, but they call it like the rack isn't called the Ross rack. It's called like the Blade 749 or something like that. I'm like, man, I was like, Mr. Ross, man, we got to Ross rack this thing, right? But anyways, going back to recruiting, this is a big field for us, and we've identified it actually as maybe not the recruiting piece, but the onboarding piece and all of that. And we spend a ton of money, like I would say way more than the average company at similar size on professional development.
So great.
What Jocelyn is working on right now is basically a competency chart over 3 years, so the employee can see where they are, and includes all of their professional development. To round out the Ross Rack story for you too, what I was saying, Dan, is so Paige, her husband Kurt, I coached him in high school soccer. So she came in as an intern. She's like, he's like, hey, Coach Scott, can you hire my girlfriend at the time, now wife, right? Jocelyn, I play soccer with her boyfriend still today, right? I just saw him just the other day playing, and she was like in grad school or something like that. And I remember hanging out with Jocelyn at this bar that we play pool at, and she just looked tired, and I was like, what's going on, man? And she's like, I'm working all these jobs, and I'm going to this night school, I'm going to weekend school. I was like, why don't you just come work for us and like stabilize your life a little bit, like work even 8 to 3. So she came, she's like, oh, freaking office work. I freaking hate them not doing that. And so she came in. Jesse, in my first marriage, was the best man in my wedding, right? So I'm telling you, I keep going to this back to this bar that we play pool at. Jesse came in because he had just got laid off from his job or something like that, and we're sitting at this bar. He's talking to me about it, having a beer, and I go, well, why don't you just come work for us? We don't have a professional sales guy. It's just me and Koza, just trying to sling deals and stuff. We're not professionalized sales strategists at all. And then, I told you about Josh. So if you think about the EPI leadership team, as we grew, I have run out of friends and network. So it's really.
And did you name off Drew as well?
Well, so Drew just came back to the company.
I heard.
Right? So super cool for me. So Drew was my best man in now my marriage this year, right? And Drew was another guy that I met coaching soccer. I guess, big thing, right?
That was the theme that I was catching.
Much younger than me. He showed up right after college we went to the same high school. We weren't there together, right? But he came back after college. I was already coaching there, and he walked in, and we just kind of got, hit it off. And he was working at Enterprise rental car, and he's like, this sucks. And I was like, just why don't you come work for us,
Yeah.
But I surrounded myself with folks, in all seriousness, that were super loyal to me and my family, which was super important, and all real willing to roll up the sleeves. And at the time, if you rewound, even 5 years ago, I was a little bit more rough and tough around the edges, a lot more empathetic and a lot more emotionally intelligent in my leadership today. But all of those guys. So then Drew left, and then Drew, same thing. And I was like, first, I wanted Drew to come back in part, to be totally honest with you, because we have unlimited vacation here and he can never come on RV trips. So I'm like, dude, just come back and work at EPI so that we can go on more trips together.
That's right.
Unlimited vacation, right? But it is. Recruiting, in all seriousness, will be a big thing. So, gentlemen, we are already at the top of the hour.
Is Paige yelling at us right now?
I see Paige pacing.
All right.
So we're going to take a quick break, and I want to kind of bring everything together.
Sounds good.
And we'll close it out. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
All right, everybody, welcome back. So we're at the top of the hour. So I want, we've talked a lot about the data that we've both collected. If you took the two surveys together, it's 2,000-something business owners. And we've had this discussion here at EPI. We've done this big report, so what and what now? What are we going to do with it? And to me, and we were talking in the break a little bit, I do believe there's an educational component here, still driving this business strategy, exit strategy, business strategy, this exit lifestyle along. Back in January, Dan, when I was sitting at that Senate, that small business committee of entrepreneurs, I kept coming back to. I kind of felt like a broken record with the senators, because I said, look, it's all about education. Because they kept asking me, what can we do? And I said, through your family business centers, your small business development centers, let's just start with the basics and educate. So where are you guys going with all the data that you guys just collected?
Well, the data typically dictates where we need to make sure that we as a team are skilled up the most and at the highest, right? While we feel confidence and our egos tell us that we know everything, we don't, right? And so if the data is saying that there's a big need in the marketing area, just double checking who's got what strengths on the team around here so that we're equipped to always make sure our clients. And so we're doing that ourselves internally. Yeah. but it also tells us to where to check in. And when we do this individually, that assessment every single year, sometimes, twice a year for every client, right? And that just allows us to understand where are we at with you individually on the business as we work together on the roadmaps to build the future of the business as an asset. And so that's where it's doing internally. But I think, we talked about this in the relationship of EPI and our partnership here with Cultivate. Our goal here is to move forward, post the summit, which is now in the past, right? This assessment is now fully accessible for all SEPAs, right? And so just bringing that awareness to go, knowledge is power for you to understand every client that owns a business because they have so much wealth wrapped up into every business. And the fact that 80% of businesses that list don't sell is a scary number. On that tiny data point, if that 80% happens again on just that 1,100, that's $5 billion of exit wealth that is not realized. And that we got to do something about. So I think it's up to us and all SEPAs to make sure that are we slowing down for everybody that owns a business to bring awareness. And this is the easiest thing for us, a 10 to 15 minute free assessment to get the knowledge. And then from there, it's all of our jobs to go, what resources to put people in front of so that they can make decisions and make change. And so I think we're starting at this awareness piece, right? Which is always the front end of the process for you guys as well. And going, let's do something about it. And that we can assist that all together through education. And I think we want to get the right series of education series because it's telling us where to spend time, not only for the SEPA community, but for their clients if they want to join into this program.
Absolutely. Greg, what do you think from boots on the ground?
Yeah, I think it's awareness for sure, but then it has to lead to action and collaboration.
Absolutely.
So when you look at those questions, that becomes a way to kind of it's like a growth hack or a cheat for how quickly can I come up with a roadmap for you.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean that those 4 questions are the only things that you focus on in each of those categories. Business owners know their business. This allows them to quickly kind of assess it. And we can make sure that directionally correct, we're not missing any major things slipping through the cracks. Let's come up with a laundry list of what needs to happen, not how, in the planning process, what needs to happen. Let's put that list in some logical order. There's no magic to it. You know your business, so let us know. And then once we have a list in an order, 90-day sprint. How many of those could we knock out in 90 days? And that comes down to what Dan was saying. What are the resources? How are we defining success? What are the deadlines? Who's involved? Is this internal, external? Is it Cultivate's going to be manning some of this stuff? Is your CPA, is your wealth manager, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a good point too. It's internal and external, right? It's some of my leadership team might take it on, and then I'm going to bring in some outside.
Yeah, because I have clients where that's the case. It's like, okay, well, how many of these do we want to take on? Well, it depends on time, money, and just resources in general. For this, we have a big recruiting need. We don't have the team internal to do it, so we got an outsourced one. So that's running in parallel with all the other work that we're doing with their leadership team internally. So we can move the needle very, very quickly, but rather than just getting busy doing stuff, let's slow down a little bit, look at an assessment like this or whatever, and prioritize work that we know. Because to me, the other big thing about this assessment is if you ask a business owner, you should be working on the business, not in it. Like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, got it.
So why don't you tell me what's in your calendar this week that's working on the business?
Right.
And they're like, I don't know. I show up and I work and that's on the business. So this is written in layman's terms, not for the professional value, people or CPAs. So a business owner could read those things and go,